Welcome to Scorched Earth and the general reading for the sign of Aquarius, Sun, Moon or Ascendant for the month of March 2023. I hope you are well. I'm using the, what am I using here? I'm using the Tarot of the Abyss by Anatolian for you today. Bit of housekeeping before we begin. If the reading resonates with you and you'd like to go a little bit deeper, there will be an extended that you can access at the end. That's the first link in the description box. The second link into the description box is to the 6-month overview that I did for each of the signs. It runs from January to June 2023. And I have reduced the price because obviously we're getting through that period now. So if you haven't had a chance to check it out and you would like to see what that period of time holds for you, then please do feel free to check out that second link. And the third link is to the to my private community, the Order of the Phoenix, over on Circle. You can watch all of the extended content over there and meet a whole heap of awesome people. So if that sounds like it's your bag, do feel free to go and check that out. So let's have a look and see what's going on with you, Aquarius. Can I have 3 cards for Aquarius? Whoa, there's the first one. We have the Knight of Wands in your recent past. Let's have current energy for Aquarius, please. 10 of Pentacles in your current energy, and it's coming towards Aquarius. Goodness. Okay, we have the Empress and we have Temperance. A double whammy of major arcana energy. So whatever's going on with you in March, it's quite big. Let's put it like that. We have the 4 of Pentacles at the bottom of the deck, followed by the Moon. And I feel compelled to tell you immediately that there is always a cost. Everything comes at a price. And it seems to me like what's happening here is you working out what is costing you. What appears on the surface to be costing you when actually, the release of it is getting you something much more. I'm not sure how else to explain what I just heard, but let's give it a second. Let's get some clarifiers out. Because there's an exchange. That's the way to put it. There's an exchange going on here, Aquarius. And I feel like the more you are willing to release, and for certain, it's fucking 8 of Cups as I've split the deck there. The more that you are willing to release, and the deeper the place that release comes from, the bigger the benefits that are coming in for you this month. So let's get some clarifiers. I'm going to flip this around so I can bitch about the camera not being straight and all that sort of thing, because, tell me about the Knight of Wands, please. We have the 6 of Cups. And we have, whatever this is, the High Priestess in reverse. Tell me about the 10 of Pentacles, please. Thank you. Ooh, Magician in reverse. Interesting. And the 10 of Swords. Tell me about the Empress and Temperance, please. Thank you. We have 3 of Swords, Wheel of Fortune, and the Knight of Pentacles. What do we have at the bottom of the deck? We have the Queen of Wands. I mean, I really like the direction that this is going in. Queen of Swords and the Sun sitting after those. I like the direction that this is going in for you, Aquarius, because it feels like it might be yet another one of those months that is actually turning out to be pretty profound for you. Not least because you're kind of pushing towards this new major arcana energy, but it's coming off the back of what it is that you are choosing to release. I mean, there's the Moon underneath there. The Moon is the card of Cancer, but it talks of really deep seated feelings. It talks, actually, fundamentally, it talks about things that are hidden. That's the message of the Moon. And sometimes those things can be kind of illusory in nature. I mean, consider how things look by the light of the Moon versus how they look by the light of the Sun, a card that we have also seen for you. But the way that I read, I tend to think about it more in terms of the subconscious, the non-conscious, the unconscious, the things that don't readily appear to you in your conscious thought day to day. It can be certainly a sense of kind of repetitive emotional patterns that we engage in on autopilot, without really considering where those reactions have come from. This 4 of Pentacles talking about an act of release. So an act of release that is coming from somewhere really, really deep within you. And it's emotional in nature. It's a water card. You know, we've got watery cards over here too. You know, we've got this Knight of Wands, Sagittarian energy, but it's very much about the here and now. And we get this sense with the Tarot of the Abyss that it is the studying of the here and now that is going on. Well, there's a studying of something in the here and now, rather than, to be more precise about that. And we see that he's got this little being here on his hand, and it seems to be connected by the head to this other being in the background. And we'll just show you that for a second. It's really quite extraordinary card. Actually looks loads like someone that I used to know a long time ago, who interestingly was a Cancer. So we have the Six of Cups and the High Priestess in reverse. And I think that this is really, really interesting, because the Six of Cups energy here, that does talk to the past, our connection to the past, our childhood, sometimes even past lives. Definitely, you know, almost a nostalgic view of this. Sometimes, I don't think it's nostalgic in your case, because we're looking at a connection to something that is over here. It's giving it that kind of past quality, Aquarius. So here you are in the here and now, or the there and then, as it was, because this is your recent past, and that honestly could be this morning. It could just be when you got out of bed this morning, or it could be, you know, going back in the last 6 weeks, where in the here and now you are studying what from the past has led you to where you are right now. And it's quite I think the expression on his face there is really quite engrossed. It's completely caught up in this. It feels like there has been some sort of epiphany's the wrong word. It's seeing the ways in which you are connected to your past self. It is seeing the ways in which patterns from childhood potentially have not just been laid down and perpetuated, but like their originating point. And this High Priestess in reverse is really interesting, because she's a very passive card, right? She talks about knowledge and wisdom, right? And wisdom being the application of knowledge, right? It's a card that talks about an open emotional experience, an open spiritual experience. And I wonder if what you've realised is how you shut down in your early life and why it was. Now, there could be all sorts of ways in which this is talking right now, right? We could be talking from a strictly psychological, emotional perspective, whereby you recognise now that certain traumatic events in your childhood have led you to detach, right? Detach emotionally, not really wanting to embark on those kind of deep, intimate relationships, because you don't operate on that level with other people, right? You may well operate on that level with yourself, and maybe if you have a trusted person, whether that's a friend or a partner, you know, whether it's an intimate relationship of a physical sort or not. But it feels like a light bulb has been going on in your head, but it's a long light bulb, right? It's a series of light bulbs right here. You know, if the High Priestess is all about being open to anything that's coming through, then the High Priestess in reverse is a closing down of that. Now, for some of you, and I feel compelled to point this out to some of you, there's something about this that is deeply spiritual in nature. I mean, yes, you may have the additional issue of the emotions, and actually I feel like our intuition, our spiritual ability, and our emotions and understanding of them actually run parallel with each other. It's quite difficult to have one. Well, certainly difficult to have the spiritual aspect of it when the emotional stuff is closed down. It stops us being able to you know, really hear our inner guide when it's talking to us. So it could be that actually as a child you were incredibly spiritual, let's put it that way. I mean, maybe you knew things that you shouldn't be able to know. No reason for you to know them. You know, maybe you had some slightly more extreme spiritual experiences. Maybe you found yourself in contact with ghosts and things like that. I mean, I'm just kind of throwing these things out here because as children we are extremely open. We're just big sponges, you know. Our brains are taking in all this information all of the time, and what can feel like a perfectly natural way of being suddenly becomes associated with this idea of not fitting in. Right? Now, as an Aquarius, you're not that interested in fitting in, but one has to wonder if that is as a direct result of the early life experiences that you had, where you were shown it doesn't really matter what you do, you are not cut from the same cloth as everybody around you. You're a completely different entity. And so that need to belong, which is most profound in childhood, then suddenly doesn't have the same weight that it used to. It's like, well, it doesn't matter what I do. I see ghosts. I think about these things. You know, I have all sorts of weird experiences that I can't explain. And when I bring those up with the people that I love, they get scared, or they get cross, or they dismiss me for being inventive and imaginative. You know, they tell me to be more serious and things like that. And that all has the effect of kind of closing the lid on all of these things, because you're taught very young. And this is from a spiritual perspective or an emotional perspective, whichever way you want to look at it. We're taught very young that people don't want to hear that sort of stuff from you. They don't want to know that you can do that. Now, what I think is going on here is a realization that it wasn't about you being weird, or it wasn't about you being, I don't know, over emotional, or any of the other things that we could talk about, right? It was a defect in the people around you, if we want to use as brutal terminology as that. It was a defect in the people around you to be able to understand and accept you. And so from this point on, there's been much more of a focus on kind of pulling away from anything that feels remotely like it is acceptance, because it's so far away from your experience now. It's quite interesting. I was musing on, I got up at dawn this morning. I had a shitload of cardboard to get rid of, so I went into the garden, my partner and I, and we're burning the cardboard, and as the sun was coming up over there, the moon was just starting to set down there. It was a big full moon in Leo, very, very dramatic. I took lots of pictures and it was really nice. But I was musing on this axis between Leo and Aquarius, and how Leo represents that which is the furthest away from the Aquarian experience, you know, just as it does equally the other way around. And how we associate Leo with the sun, we associate it with warmth, we associate it with children and childhood, we associate it with matters of the heart. And that's so far away from the Aquarian experience that it cannot help but fashion you into the creature that you are. Now, I'm not saying that you're a creature, and I'm also not saying that there's anything wrong with you. But what I am saying is that was a coping mechanism. It's one that allowed you to continue functioning in the world. But moving forwards, in order for you to grow in the way that you are supposed to as a soul living a human existence right here, what we're doing is looking for ways to change that which is automatic, that which is on autopilot for you, right? And when we turn to your current energy here, we've got this Ten of Pentacles. We've got the Magician with the Ten of Swords. So we've got two cards here that deal with completion. And one is positive and one is you know, given to be rather negative. In fact, you know, both cards contain both those different aspects, so let's not get too hung up on anything here. But the Ten of Pentacles represents your stability, your security, your environment, your material environment often. But it's sometimes called the Happy Family card too. And it's so interesting to me. Do you know what's really standing out here in the Knight of Wands? It is his hand. So he's looking at these past experiences are sitting in his hand, and then this hand is reaching out. We've got the little family represented here. You know, it is your roots, it is where you've come from, but it is also what you've built in order to survive in the world right now. It represents your internal security and stability and all that kind of thing. But when we come to a 10, because it deals with completions, we come to this idea of having kind of topped out at a particular direction, right? Going about things in a particular way. You know, the Ten of Pentacles can sometimes be a little bit rigid, because what we've got there is sometimes a sense of pride in what we've managed to achieve, despite all of the experiences that we had in our youth. And sometimes that can make us feel like we need to hold on to those harder. And sort of bear with me a second here, because it's almost like having a sense of pride in what you've managed to achieve despite all of these early experiences. But what if it was more like, look at what you've achieved because of these early experiences? Like this sense that I've got of there being a switch out now, right? There's things are being shuffled around inside you, is so that you look at this Ten of Pentacles and go, well, here it is. This is what I've achieved because of my early life experiences. Where do I now need to reset? Because having processed all of these early emotional experiences, all of these early childhood experiences, now that we're looking at what this actually means, maybe I can do things a little bit differently. Maybe I can start striking out beyond what is the comfort zone that I have, achieved for myself around here. Because there seems to me to be an understanding. It's this understanding of having topped out. Like, you want to grow, you want to evolve, you want to achieve so much more. Personally, spiritually, emotionally, maybe even materially too. But this Magician is upside down. This Magician that represents our power, our sphere of influence, right? Our ability to manage all of the elements at the same time, and combine that with our intent so that we manifest for ourselves the life that we want. But you didn't. What didn't you do? The Magician feels to me, right here, that there's been a visualization issue. And maybe that's something that's been your ability to be able to visualize the future and where you're going and all that sort of stuff has been something that has come very easily to you in the past. But in the here and now, it feels somewhat diminished. There's a level of uncertainty around what you're dealing with. And maybe that is in the material, maybe it's in the emotional, maybe it's in the spiritual. You've got to take it as it resonates to you. But the uncertainty that's come in means you're not really quite even sure what it is that you want to manifest moving forwards. It's like you're in a state of flux, and you recognize that you're in a state of flux at this point. And so you can't really manifest anything in until you understand what's going on here. Maybe you're not quite at the point where you've understood it yet. Make sense of it. We all have idealistic ideas, I guess, about where our life is going to go when we're in our teens, and we've got that kind of psychopathic, almost, because teenagers are pretty psychopathic hero fixation, where we're going to, be winners at everything. And sometimes it's offset, it's counterbalanced by this sense of failure over and over again, right, that just keeps coming to meet us, and you're like, well, what the fuck, I'm supposed to be the hero in my own story here, and this shit stuff keeps happening. Bit by bit, you kind of crawled out of your teens and into your 20s, and you really started to make your mark on the world. Like, you went to do the things that you went to do. Maybe you went traveling, maybe you got a really good job and you worked your way up because you had the vision to see where you were going. You, to me, don't seem to know where you're going now. And that's okay, because everything's changing in light of what's coming to the surface of this, from this. And there's something a little less controlled and detached, it seems, that is being asked of you before you move from where you are right now. Because ultimately, in order for you to move, that magician really does need to go the right way up, and currently it's not. There are endings that you need to negotiate, and these are probably endings that revolve around your internal narrative of who you actually are, Aquarius, as a result of where you have come from. And again, I don't think that these are things that you share. You are not an oversharing sign, right? You're very private. But the rumbles feel, and there are rumbles, I can feel the rumbles. The rumbles are all around this Ten of Pentacles here. It's like what you've built and whether you want to keep it. You know, whether the pride that you have in what you have built is now affected by this new understanding of some of the bits of you that you might actually take some pride in, that you realise now are coping mechanisms that were introduced through stress, right? That actually maybe now you're starting to outgrow. Because when we come into February, no, we come into March, we've got this Empress and Temperance energy. I mean, these are big major arcana energies, and you know, here the Empress is depicted as pregnant. So what is coming towards you, or what it is that you're creating, is by definition slow. This for me is a Taurus card, so we're dealing with fixed earth. It's the slowest moving element of all of them, but the transformation seems to be within you, rather than your material circumstances. It doesn't seem to have anything to do with your material circumstances at this point. But it's combined with the Temperance card, which also talks about patience. I mean, sometimes it talks about divine timing, which drives me fucking nuts. But it's both cards talk about there being a slow approach to what it is that you're trying to the endings that you are actually navigating at this point. Because the Empress is all to do with abundance. And I would stick the word gratitude in there as well, because I always feel that sense of gratitude when the Empress is there. Here are the things that I'm really grateful for, and I am going to increase the things that I am grateful for. March seems to me, actually, on the whole, to be a month where, instead of being Aquarius who has achieved these things despite their early life experiences, which we don't really think about too much anyway, because, you know, it was kind of shit then and it's better now. We're migrating to almost to a point of neutrality, where those things that happened in your past, and now you understand them better and you've connected them to who you are in the present, formulate this tabula rasa, this blank slate. And so from here, you can do anything that you want. If you can envisage it, if you can visualize it, if you can imagine it, then you can create it, right? That's the act of turning the magician the right way around. But there's healing that has to happen first. And I do feel that healing needs to come from somewhere really, really deep in you. Oh, look at that, 9 of Swords behind there, and I didn't even see that. I mean, what are the things that you actually worry about subconsciously, right? That when those worries come to the surface, you go, oh, don't be so fucking ridiculous to yourself. And then you just move on. It doesn't actually deal with the issues. It just has those kind of rumbling along underneath all the time. And maybe it comes out in slightly odd ways. You know, it's going to leak out somewhere, because nothing can be truly properly repressed. And it's better to look at these things and go, well, I appreciate that I was looking at that with the eyes of a child when that happened in, I don't know, 1982 or something like that. But where I am now, 40 years later, I was going to say 30 years later, but you know, kind of forgot how old I was for a second there. Everything is different. I am different. And I'm open to learning in a way, because I'm open to a deep learning and a deep healing, because I understand that I am not under threat. You know, when we're talking about this axis of Leo and Aquarius, right, that moving towards something that feels good rather than something that objectively is good is not something that's inherently threatening for you. And that can be people, that can be situations, it can be whatever you want. Because at the bottom of it all, we've got this 3 of Swords. we've got this broken heart. Now, like I said, this might be something that you've not thought about in a very long time, but the Wheel of Fortune is here, another 10, to indicate that there is a change of fortune coming up for you, but you have to create space for it. And I think even the small things, when they're coming from a really deep emotional place, if we can shift those, the amount of space that it makes is huge compared to the obvious things that are in our material life day to day. You know, I am going to spring clean this room, right? Okay, that's great. I'll throw out some stuff I don't need. It looks tidy. It's all right. But say, for example, a really profound difference that had an emotional basis would be me looking at this bookcase here that I've got, where I've still got all of my legal textbooks from when I was at university. Because some emotional part of me is holding on to the fact that at one point I was going to be a barrister, and maybe I've let that go, but I haven't entirely let that go. Why would I need those books? They're all out of date now, but I can't quite bring myself to throw them away. That would create an emotional space that was much, much bigger than just the space on the shelves that they occupy currently. It's that kind of feeling that I've got here for you. And the fact that you can't quite at this point visualize how to move forwards is okay. That's all right, because I think that you're in a transitional stage. You're in this kind of liminal place where any vision of the future would have you taking your eye away from what is going on underneath, what it is that needs to be let go at this point. And the Knight of Pentacles is about really extracting what is of value from what remains once you've cleared out what's going on underneath. It's about focusing your mind on elevating that. Now, you know, this Temperance card it always has 2 cups on, and usually it's an angel pouring from one cup into another. But it does put us in mind of intimacy, which is what for me the 2 of Cups talks about. There's a level of intimacy with yourself that only you can actually achieve with yourself, that is acting as something that is creating fertile ground for where you move forwards. You know, we've got these double queens here, and even the queens are talking about the internal subjective experience. I mean, for you, Aquarius, I feel like this would be a month for just knocking off the kingly king of Swords, fucking head adornments that you got on, just whopping those off for a second. And instead of objectively viewing facts about things, sort of lean into the subjective experience here. You know, find out what this is, find out what this 9 of Swords is, and then do the work necessary to pull them out. Because, like I said, there's a great deal of space that needs to be made here for where you go next, and it's not quite ready yet. It's gestating. You have to be patient, but there's something being lined up, and the more space that you can move, the more space that you can make now, the bigger the changes coming up. Like I said, it's a switch. We're letting go of this and we're embracing this and this, but it needs to take up space to do that, and at the moment your hard drive is full. So what are you going to delete, I guess, would be the way forwards with this. Right, this is really interesting. I'm going to go and have a look at March specifically. So if you would like to join me over there, you're very, very welcome. First link in the description box. If not, just be aware that this seems to be a month where it could well be that there are all sorts of things that you have not thought about in years that are suddenly coming up to the surface, right? Connections that you are making that you didn't see before. And it could be off the back of something that you've read. It could be off the back of something that someone says to you. It could just be, I don't know, picking something up that sparks a memory that you haven't given any thought to in decades. And it creates a domino effect. This is a month for really leaning into that kind of energy, because I think next month is going to be quite sparky. So, I shall leave it there. Know that I love you all very, very much, and I'll see you soon.